Within the Warhammer 40k community, there is a lot of banter between the people who are fans of different armies just kind of trash-talking each other, and most of the time it's just like playful and fun like that. But I have noticed that there are some armies that are getting a lot more hate than they deserve, one of them being my favorite one, the Spacewolves. So I wanted to talk about the Spacewolves a little bit, hype them up, mention some stuff that not many people know about or only really get revealed into their own books. There's plenty of cool stuff to love about them, and even though they are a flawed legion, they are still a very effective and a very cool one. So who are the Spacewolves? The Spacewolves are one of the first 20 founding chapters, which means that no other Space Marines have existed before these 20 legions. They are the 6th, under the lead of Leman Russ, who I recently made a video about if you're interested in learning more about him. The Spacewolves' biggest purpose and goal is to be the executioners. They are the offensive spear that the Emperor uses to take down large enemy threats, with a bombastic display of glory. The Spacewolves have a very unique culture to them. They come from the planet called Fenris, which is a death world that completely destroys itself and is reborn every other few years, causing the planet to not really be able to build large-scale cities. Leman Russ himself stated that he rather want the world to stay as wild as it is now in order for possible recruits to be a whole lot stronger during their initiation. Their theme is very, very similar to real-life Viking culture. They reuse words, and even some of their mythology has taken inspiration from our own Norse mythology in real life. It is a little debate within the Spacewolves Legion themselves if they even see the Emperor as a god or not, because even though they do have their own mythologies, it mostly takes a very spiritual role rather than a worshipping role, believing that certain runes have powers, that they can scry to see the future, and they are even able to cultivate powers through the warp with said identity. That's why they don't really have librarians, but they have something called rune priests, able to use completely different powers from the warp that other Space Marine chapters aren't able to tap into. Fun fact, the White Scars also have something like this. The Spacewolves to their core are very gimmicky. Even their initiation process is different from the others, whereas other Space Marine chapters usually recruit people around the age of 4 to 6 years old to just really get the implants going early. Spacewolves get them as late as 16, which means that some of them are even able to have fathered children at some point. The Imperium itself thinks that Leman Russ's gene seed is very unstable, one of the more risky ones to use for the founding chapters. Their gene seed is called the Canis Helix, which is one of the last implants that they take before becoming a fully fledged Space Wolf. Their gene seed is a lot more extreme with its mutations, able to enhance the senses of the Space Wolves, making so that their reflexes are faster, they have higher senses. Also, most of the time they start to develop actual canines, growing sharp teeth, and their eyes become yellowy, like those of actual wolves, but also have a bloodlust that is a lot more extreme compared to the other chapters. It is a rage probably on par with something like the Blood Angels, who can also absolutely lose their shit and turn into mind-killing vampire dudes. But for the Spacewolves, it's the Curse of the Wolfen, where they completely give in to the bloodlusted rage and straight up turn into a werewolf, but then Space Marine sized, so it's like 500 times more dangerous than a regular werewolf. So in terms of raw power of the gene seed, it is lore-wise stated they are Space Marines, but just a little better, which is probably why they get a lot of hate from people who are a fan of other Space Marine chapters, like the Dark Angels. It's usually the Dark Angels that hate us. But aside from saying Spacewolves are literally better than other Marines, or the fact that the Spacewolves have a very special snowflake-like culture compared to most of the other Space Marines, what makes them such a fun army? There's one thing I feel like people don't talk about much when it comes to the Spacewolves, and that is the fact that with all the battle chanting they're doing, what they are actively doing on the battlefield is being a huge boost to morale for the regular Astra Militarum. When you, as a foot soldier, have to fight impossible odds, and there is a Space Marine chapter next to you, what would you rather have? A Space Wolf that is shouting battle cans, motivating everybody around him to fight even harder, to kill as much as you can in the name of the Emperor? or a dark angel who has never said a single word to you. There is even an example during the 13th Black Crusade where a single wolf guard has made a stand against some traitor marines together with people from the Astra Militarum from all different kinds of planets. And as he started shouting the Space Wolf chants and their regular phrases, the other soldiers started spouting their own cants from their own homeworlds, and thus fighting incredibly hard to hold the point they were supposed to hold, which they were successful at in the end. And to add to that, Space Wolves usually care quite a lot for regular human life. Plenty of other Space Marine chapters don't do that. They don't give a single fuck if 1 million people die because there are billions upon billions of humans left. There's an example that during the Months of Shame, which is an event where the Inquisition has straight up declared war against the Space Wolves, where the Wolves together with Grey Knights under the leadership of the Inquisition had to fight Angron, the World Eaters, and some demons on a homeworld that is completely surrounded by chaos. And at the end they were able to defeat Angron and save the planet. However, the Inquisition thought that since everybody on that planet now knows about chaos and its possible corruptions, they needed to be purged. However, the Wolves argued that the entire civilization did not see most of the events. They were told to evacuate, hold quiet, and not see a damn thing. So they should be pure people. The Inquisition responded by trying to exterminatus the planet, which just means a full-on total destruction, and the Space Wolves responded by saving the people. This has sparked a massive civil war within the Imperium and caused a lot of resources to go to waste upon the basis of Space Wolves simply trying to save human lives. So in terms of that, they are on par with another chapter like the Salamanders to really embrace the role of being protectors of humanity. What also is kind of overlooked is how artistic the Space Wolves actually are. Whenever they leave a battlefield, the most impressive kill that they've got, they tend to make trophies out of them, scalping them for their skulls, their fur, or maybe some tusks to wear to the next battlefield, or just keep into decoration in their own rooms. From their deeds and their battles, they also write sagas, which is a form of poetry, and it also documents the recent battles that they've had. This tradition has actually made it so that the Space Wolves are the most well-documented Astartes chapter, aside from the Ultramarines themselves. But that is because that's their whole ass thing. And another extremely cultured thing that they make themselves: alcohol. Space Marines usually cannot get drunk. But the Space Wolves have made it in a way that the alcohol is so incredibly potent that it works on Astartes. If a regular human tries to drink it, they will just instantly die out of alcohol poisoning. But for the Astartes, it's just a lovely beverage that they get to enjoy. And it's not even problematic. If any one of them is a stupid drunk, the others just beat him the fuck up, which is supported within the culture. It's perfect. And one of my favorite traits that the Space Wolves have is that they just really fucking love being Space Marines. They always get excited right before a battle, cheering and yelling, just being super excited to get back out on the field again and kill some stuff. Most other Space Marine chapters see it as like their duty, their purpose, whatever, and the Space Wolves are just like, let's go have some fucking fun, you guys. It's kind of funny, I love it. I also want to tackle some controversial things that the Wolves have gotten, why so many people hate them within the community, just to defend them the same as I did with Lehman Russ in my previous video. When people start shitting on the Space Wolves, there is one very obvious thing that they often state, and that is the overuse of the word wolf within the Space Wolves chapter. Within the existing units that they have, the word wolf is prominent with like 70% of the roster, which is a ridiculous amount of hearing the word wolf, especially when it's used twice, like Wolfguard Battle Leader on Thunderwolf. Bit ridiculous. However, this is an issue that the writers themselves have already fixed, only the 40k tabletop game itself does not change it. We see a lot that the wolf terms are words from the Fenrisian language that are wrongfully translated into Imperial Gothic, which to us is English. Even to the point where Space Wolves, as a name, is not even their official name. They call themselves the Vulca Fenryka, and I'm pretty sure that roughly translates to the people of Fenris. But not only that, instead of Wolf Lords, they have Jarls. Wolf Priests are Gothi, Wolfguard are Varangai, Hell, you could even say that the Thunder Wolves or the Fenrisian Wolves will just be Fenrisians. I think it would be a great help if Games Workshop decided to just change all of the wolf names to what we know to be the Fenrisian names. It might be a bit harder to remember all the different names from the units, but then again, with how many armies already exist with weird names just scattered throughout, I don't think it would be that much of a difficult change to make. And Spacewolves getting a range refresh, it would now be a great time to get rid of the annoying wolf theme being splattered across the board the entire time. They even changed the Horus Heresy Spacewolf helmets because they got shit on for having the wolf shape again. Later on they changed it to the more Viking aesthetic, which is now seemingly more the direction that they are going with for the Spacewolves. Also, for those fucking stupid ass wolf helmets, they put it on the special skin of the Space Marine 2 game, and I hate it. Because if you look at the other models, the newer one, they look so much better. Look at that Viking helmet thing that they just plastered on there. Whoever designed that, promote that motherfucker. It's such a cool fucking look. There are also a lot of people that say that the Space Wolves are tactically inept as a chapter, not being able to actually use strategy but just like head rush in. And most of the times that's not really true. Even in the Lehman Russ video that I'll just put here again somewhere, I've explained that many of their battles were deliberate choices. Admittedly, they took risks, for sure. And as much as I could talk about their strategies actually being valid, 40k overall has some pretty bonkers strategies and tactics used by every army. None of it makes sense because it's very satire, but for the standard of 40k, the Wolves are using very sound tactics under the leadership of Lehman Russ and in a current setting under Logan Grimnar. Which is even why during the 13th Black Crusade they were able to take down a Blackstone fortress by just sieging the damn place from within. And if any of the Astartes are idiots, it's most likely Bloodclaws, which are the youngest Space Marines within their chapter. Instead of being Scout Marines like they do with regular other chapters, the Space Wolf instantly donned them in power armor and let them lead the charge on the front line, because of how eager they are to prove themselves. And after all of that, there is also a big comparison between the 30k Space Wolves and the 40k Space Wolves. In 10,000 years, their chapter has changed a lot to be more tactful, more mature, and more careful with the decisions that they made. And now, under the leadership of Logan Grimnar, yes, that's a kick-ass name, I know, the Space Wolves have become a very noble, very proud chapter. So out of all the Space Marine chapters, they just got the biggest glow up after the Heresy. And lastly, why people might not like the Space Wolves is probably because of jealousy. Space Wolves get a lot of models, and with the new ones coming up, they look absolutely amazing. So of course there are gonna be people that play Xeno armies or other Space Marine chapters that don't get as highlighted as much as the Space Wolves do, and they start growing bitter, throwing shade at a faction that gets so much more love from Games Workshop than their own. There's plenty of bad stereotyping about the Space Wolves that are often debunked in books. However, people that hate Space Wolves will not go and read Space Wolf books. So you kind of miss out on most of their lore, most of their reasoning, and that's kind of a waste. And even after all of that, if you still decide to hate the Space Wolves, at that point, the army is just not for you, and that's completely fine. What makes Warhammer so interesting is that there are so many factions that hate each other and want to kill each other off. So if you prefer a different army, you get to root for those guys whenever they fight the Space Wolves. That does not mean you should actively hate the faction or the people that play them or like them. We should celebrate the fact that people have interests in so many different armies. That means that you're just gonna have a lot more variation playing against completely different armies compared to your own. I strongly believe that every faction has a lot of cool stuff that people could choose to fall in love with. That is one of the important things that makes Warhammer 40k so awesome. All in all, I hope you learned some little new facts about the Space Wolves. If you're a new fan of the chapter, there is plenty of things to dive into with the lore. And there is literally no bad place to start, necessarily. Whether it's from watching YouTube videos, maybe starting up an audiobook, or just picking up their codex and reading what's inside of it. If you still dislike the Space Wolves, and you've also watched my other video defending Lehman Russ about a lot of the drama that happened during the Horus Heresy, let me know in the comments why you hate them so much, because at this point, I don't understand you. Give the video a like, subscribe, comment, the whole shebang. My channel is still very, very small. I really appreciate any kind of interaction with my channel. Wish you a good rest of the day and or evening, and laters.